Raheem Palmer, betting analyst from The Ringer on social. You can find him at I am Rostradamus, down to the Final Four in the NBA. So the games are interesting. The matchups have angles galore. We'll get into last night's game, Timberwolves Thunder. Of course, let's save the best for last. Pacers Knicks and some picks for tonight. Do you find yourself dabbling more into Major League Baseball this time of year? WNBA. I know baseball betting is something that you got into a couple of years ago, but with the limited card in the NBA, have you been diving more into those other sports?
I haven't gotten into WNBA yet. I mean, obviously, I'm moving, so like that's been
Right.
like the big thing that's kind of been taking up a lot of my time. I think normally I would have gotten into WNBA a little bit more. I did play I think I played the Lynx the other night against somebody, and that was a pretty easy win
Oh,
against the
the
Sparks.
with the Dallas was it the Dallas Stars? Because that was Paige Becker's opening
Nah, it
game.
was the game after that. I think they played the Sparks on Sunday. And that was a pretty easy win. So I kind of picked my spots for WNBA. Same thing with baseball. So, if I could find spots here and there, I'm taking them. I'm looking forward to the Euro League Final Four, which is this weekend. I'm really excited about that. I get into a lot of foreign basketball, much more than people realize. Like, Australia NBL, that's been over for like a month. But, KBL, the KBL finals were the other day, South Korean, CBA. Like, I find that there's just so many things to bet on. So you don't even have to limit yourself to the big markets. But I'll definitely be on some baseball this summer and some WNBA this year. And especially with me moving to Vegas, I can actually go to some WNBA games now.
So I always like whenever we get a chance to chat before we get into the picks themselves to
Mhm.
pick your brain on the psychology of betting. You dabble in the props world in the NBA. I do props work for rotowire.com, so I do a
Mhm.
lot of props analysis too, but it's really not my favorite flavor of betting. I like taking props, but I'm much more of a sides and totals guy. What is it about you that makes you gravitate more towards sides and totals? The is it the high variance of props that you're maybe not a fan of? I know that there are specific betting limits also because you bet a pretty heavy penny on these games, and I know that they limit that with props. So for you, what is it about the props world that you'll say, like, I'll take a nibble, but that's not where your bread is buttered?
I think it's just because I started with sides and totals. That's what I know best. And honestly, I think I'm going to get more into props moving forward because I'm starting to find sides to be a little bit tougher. Um, and I think at least with props, I think that's probably an easier way. But I mean, you do run into issues with the limits. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. But I think I'm probably going to be opening my portfolio up to more props. And I actually have a prop that I like for tonight.
Okay, we will get to that. I don't think many of our listeners, many of us have to worry about betting limits. So if props is more your thing, don't hold back. Last night, free throw merchant Shea Gilgeous-Alexander got to the line 14 times. His ability to draw those touch fouls was really frustrating Minnesota. Do you feel like they called the game differently for him? That seems to be the common refrain the day after the game, is that he was getting calls that we're just not seeing throughout the playoffs.
It does feel that way. It is frustrating to kind of see the whistle that he gets. And I felt like that all year long. But you got a guy in Jalen Brunson who's not even looking at the rim sometimes. He's just looking to just straight up draw fouls. So, if the Knicks and the Thunder make it to the NBA Finals, I think you're going to see the Dwayne Wade 2006 Finals on steroids with all the outrage from people. So, um, at the end of the day, I mean, we've seen it before with James Harden. We've seen it with DeMar DeRozan. We've seen it with Lou Williams. Until the NBA decides we're not going to reward this, guys are going to take advantage. So it's up to the NBA. They said that they would stop calling this stuff a couple years ago, and then they go right back to it. So the NBA just needs to take itself more seriously and just let the best players in the world decide the game on the floor.
I mean, it's that lean in with the forearm push off, and then somehow it's a foul on the defender. I don't see that anywhere else, and I hate being the one that sits back day after a game. Yes, I was on Minnesota plus 7.5, so there's a little bit of salt in there with that, but I just don't see that anywhere else. Or guys are getting that sort of call, so I just don't know how he gets away with that.
It's frustrating for me as somebody who just watches a lot of foreign basketball, I've been watching college basketball, I've been watching WNBA. It feels like in every level of basketball, except for the NBA, you don't see this type of stuff. Like, I mean, you look at EuroLeague, it's more physical. You look at WNBA, the WNBA is way more physical than the NBA at this point in time. And yet, for some reason, the best basketball players in the world need this crush. And what's so interesting is because we look at the second half of last year going into the Olympics, it was almost like they were trying to prepare the players for the Olympics in a more physical game by not calling anything. And then you go right back into what we're seeing now. So it is very disgusting.
Still, Minnesota can do something to take advantage of it because OKC is, and Minnesota was not. The free throw disparity, especially through the first 3 quarters of the game, was pretty stark. What side were you on last night, and did Game 1 do anything to alter your perception of the Western Conference series?
I was on the first half under 110 and a half.
That's not bad.
And I didn't have to sweat that one at all.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. But, I mean, my model really, really, really loves the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, going into the series, I think OKC was minus 340. My model actually had them at an 88% chance of winning. And you talk about minus 775. And now, if you look at after Game 1, they are at minus 750. And my model is currently at minus 1377, giving them a 93% chance of winning. It has OKC as overwhelming favorites. And I talk a lot about the Game 7 trend, fading teams off of a Game 7. But to come into that game, you're watching the first quarter of that game, Minnesota had 6 turnovers and 7 fouls, and they were winning that game. And I said to myself, the Wolves don't have any chance of winning this series if they're going to turn the ball over this much. And they didn't capitalize on it in the first quarter. But you saw going forward, the Thunder took over that game. And I just think this is kind of a really tough matchup for Minnesota, just because you look at the game, Minnesota only took 12 shots at the rim. So if you're not going to be able to get to the rim, you're going to turn the ball over. You're just in a tough spot. And I just think Oklahoma City, and I suggested this on East Coast Bias on Tuesday, if you want to take Oklahoma City to win the series, you might as well have just laid the minus 170 on them to win the NBA title, because they were minus 350 or so against Minnesota. They're probably going to be in the 400 or 500 range against New York or Indiana. So I think Oklahoma City is the rightful favorite to win the title. And I don't see this being a very long series.
So my only pushback on that thought, and a lot of what you said rings true, but we've seen teams that have had really poor turnover performances in the playoffs correct that going into the next game, and that is typically what is able to drag them out of the mud. It was almost a perfect OKC performance. And we never overreact more on a series than we do from Game 1 to Game 2. Now, if you already thought that OKC was going to dominate this series, that's just confirmation bias. But I do think what was wrong with Minnesota in Game 1, you can at least identify it and say, okay, fix this, fix that. And Chris Finch is a good enough coach to at least get that out of his guys, to extend this series at the very least, if not win it outright.
See, here's the tough thing. They turned the ball over this much against the Golden State Warriors as well. I mean, you look at, they averaged around 18 turnovers a game in that series. So this is going to be an issue going forward. I don't know how they clean that up. They only had 17 turnovers last night. I almost felt like that was a good turnover game for them, because if you look at, I think it was Game 5 against Golden State, they had 20 turnovers. Game 4 against Golden State, they had 19 turnovers. Game 3, they had 18 turnovers. So, this could actually get worse. And I don't feel like Oklahoma City actually played their best game. Like, I truly don't. So, I think the one thing that you'll see from Minnesota is they'll shoot the ball better. They won't go 15 or 51. 29% from the field. Minnesota's going to shoot the ball better than them. So this should be they should have closer games during this series. But as a whole, I still think Oklahoma City should be huge favorites. Me personally, for game two, I'm betting the over. Over 214.5. I think that total is very, very short considering how Minnesota shot in game one. I think Minnesota might go to the free throw line a little bit more. Um, I don't see how they slow down Shea. So yeah, I'm going over on game two.
Yeah, they had no answer. Even Isaiah Hartenstein was getting going early on in the game, and then Chet Holmgren late. It just felt like the OKC had several punches to throw, and they still have a lot left in the tank. All right, let's get to the reason why everybody has turned their radios up listening to this. It's tonight's game, Knicks Pacers, game one. What's the bet tonight, and how do you see this series playing out?
We're gonna go with a prop here. We're going to go with Jalen Brunson over 28.5 points. Look at what Donovan Mitchell did to this Pacers team. 33 points in game one, 48 points in game two, 43 points in game three. He had an off game in game four, but right back to 35 points in game five. I think Jalen Brunson's going to have a monster series. I don't see them slowing him down at all. I think the pace of the game lends itself to more points here. So let's go with Jalen Brunson over 28.5 points. As far as the series, I think you have to take Indiana. I think the price is pretty much telling you that's where the value is. Like when I look at my model, I have this very, very close. Like I think if I pull this up, I actually have the Knicks winning this around, what's the number I have? I have the Knicks as favorites winning 51.83% of the time. And the Pacers winning 48.18% of the time. So, at plus 124, I think you're getting tremendous value on the Indiana Pacers, who, after the All-Star break, they've probably been one of the best teams in the league. I think there's just so much value on that. You have to take it. As far as playing the side tonight, I don't understand why this line is 4.5. I think this line is way too high. I actually have this Knicks -2. So at 4.5, you're kind of getting some value. I think you could probably sprinkle something on Indiana money line. I'm a little bit afraid of it in the sense that my model is so off from the market that I don't know if the market is charging a Knicks tax or, the odds makers truly believe that the Knicks should be favored by this much at home. But the disparity I'm showing right now is that this line should be Knicks -2. And then also, I think one of the things that we've seen from the Pacers series throughout the postseason is that the pace tends to catch teams off guard. So, those game ones, they kind of blitz teams. And I kind of want to stick with that trend, go with the Pacers plus 4.5 and on the money line. But my best bet by far is Jalen Brunson over 28.5 points tonight.
To that point, if you like that last remark from Raheem, the first half for Indiana is interesting because the Knicks are a great closing unit. And if the game is close, I'm going to like New York late. Did you upgrade New York after the Boston series? Because perhaps that is the difference between what the market is telling us and what your model is telling us.
I think so. My model, it kind of automatically, does it because it takes into account strength of schedule. So after every game, after you simulate it, it's going to take into account the score of the last game. So it is upgrading them. But when I personally look at them, I don't know if they're any different than they were before. I just think Boston, again, I don't want to not give New York credit, but I think Boston, they choked away 3 games in which they had double-digit leads. Yep. I don't know what to make of that. And then even when I look at that Pistons series, that series should have gone to game 7. They kind of got cheated out of that, the free throws with Tim Hardaway Jr. at the end. And they really struggled against the Pistons. So I think, this is going to be a very long series. I actually think you can play over 5.5 games. And I've gotten burnt on this during the postseason earlier this year.
Same.
But I think this is a series where if this was a short series, it's because of an injury and it was completely shocking.
Yeah, I have confidently played over 5.5 in 2 separate series so far throughout the postseason and have lost both of them. And so I think I'm done with that bet. Raheem Palmer, betting analyst from The Ringer at I Am Rostradamus is how you can find him on social. Thanks so much, Raheem.
No doubt. Thanks for having me.